Good evening. I'd like to call to order this public hearing for the council for the Borough of Gettysburg, Monday, February 2nd, 2026, 6:30 p.m. We do need to record a roll call of everybody in the room, so we will start over here with Sergeant Evans. We'll go around the table this way, and then we need to work our way back and forth through the gallery. Everybody needs to say their name out loud, please. Sergeant Evans, please.
Sergeant Christopher Evans.
Thank you.
Mayor Chad Allen Carr.
Kimberly Mayers.
William Mooney.
Chris Berger.
Alicia Sanders.
Matthew Moon.
Peter Bales.
Jeff Rio.
Sarah Stahl, Borough Secretary.
Charles Gable, Borough Manager.
John Whitmore, Planning Director.
Chad Clayball, Engineer.
All right. Ella, would you mind stating your name for the records in the hearing, please?
Yeah. Elizabeth Brito.
Thank you. All right. Over here, please. Thank you. And then in the back. Thank you. Thank you.
Cindy Small. Carolyn Walkerman. Mary Grace Kaufman. Troy Dean. Kelly O'Connor.
All right. Did we miss anybody? Did everybody state their name? And is everybody signed in? All right. Thank you all. Mr. Lawson, would you like to take the podium? Thank you.
Are you ready for me to start my presentation?
Certainly.
Great. So my name is Harlan Lawson. I work with GMS Funding Solutions. And we're assisting the Adams County Children's Advocacy Center with their Brighter Tomorrow Center renovations project. I'd like to first start out by thanking the borough staff for their collaboration and coordination in getting this meeting scheduled and then rescheduled with the weather event we received about a week ago. I appreciate all your efforts on that front. So each year, approximately 12% of the state's CDBG allocation is set aside for the discretionary CDBG program. Any eligible Act 179 entitlement borough, like Gettysburg, is able to apply to that program if 75% or more of their most recent entitlement allocation is approved for a project. As we were fortunate enough to be selected for the borough's FY 2025 entitlement allocation, and that unlocks our ability to apply. So as a follow-up to that, we would like to submit a $1.2 million request to the discretionary CDBG program, sometimes referred to as the competitive CDBG program, for the Brighter Tomorrow Center renovation project. The CAC is currently located at 450 West Middle Street, where they provide a limited number of services. Those services are limited to what they could provide due to layout and security constraints. The renovations at 224 Baltimore Street will provide ample room to accommodate the CAC's wide array of programs and services, including child abuse investigations, forensic interviews, medical exams and clinical care, and mental health services. The project itself is eligible under the Areas Benefiting Low and Moderate Income Persons National Objective via the limited clientele category, as abused children are considered a presumed benefit population. Any renovations or improvements constructed at the facility will directly expand the CAC's ability to provide services to that presumed benefit population. Since our last presentation, we were fortunate to receive $500,000 from the local share account grant towards the project. This was a grant program that we applied for in 2024, and we were awarded funds towards the end of 2025. We also toured the DCED Deputy Secretary Rick Valello at the facility in January and received very encouraging feedback from the Deputy Secretary on the project's competitiveness for the discretionary CDBG program. So with that, on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Center, I'd like to respectfully request that the Borough Council entertain a resolution to apply to the competitive CDBG program for $1.2 million for the Brighter Tomorrow Center renovations project. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have on that request. Thank you.
All right. Do we ask questions in a hearing? I don't think we do we?
No.
No. So alas, we're not able to ask you any questions this evening, but for the folks who came in, do please record your names for us. Thank you. Is there any other information we need to discuss at this moment?
Just a procedural matter. If you do have questions, you would be able to ask those at the formal business meeting, which will be after this.
Right. All right, so at this point, we are here to accept public comment on this application. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. So is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this intended use?
We weren't expecting to say anything, but we're all here in support.
Okay, did anybody want to make a statement? This is a public hearing, so we're here to hear your statements.
Since I'm a prior board member, but
I know, Irene, I know. We need you to state your name and your address, please.
My name is Irene Powell, and I live at 212 Springs Avenue, a few houses down from Matt and around the corner from Chris. I'm not a current board member, but I have been for 6 years, and I'll come back again in June. We've been working on this quest for many years because the Children's Advocacy Center has long outgrown the capacity of their current location on Middle Street. So this is a greatly needed thing for all of the children in this county and their caregivers, and it's really, really important. But I do want to add, this is a really neat old building right on Baltimore Street, and we're going to comply and fully intend to have it face the community the way it has for I don't know how many years. And it's one of the only properties that has a front lawn. So we're going to take good care to preserve everything as best as possible and be an integral part of the whole downtown community, participate in celebrations, be present. We will be there for everybody. I just wanted to add that little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Is there any other statements?
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Cindy Small. I'm the Vice President of the Board of the Children's Advocacy Center, and I think it might be important to point out what might happen if we are not able to move into this expanded space. Currently, we're really able to with utmost privacy, serve one child at a time in the old, overstuffed house that we're in. We are grateful for this house and for the members of the community that started the CAC over 20 years ago. But what we have done as an organization is we've grown from a service that provides the very basic, most required services for these children in the immediate time where they may need to be seen or have to make an appearance in court, to working with these children as they grow into teenagers and into adults. We are with them for life, we tell them. We do not discharge these children at the end of a forensic interview or at the end of mental health services. We tell them and their families, which is another extension of what we do, that we will provide these services. Therefore, this house that we would be rehabilitating will also provide support services for the families. We have support groups for teenagers that goes, let's say, if it extends for 6 weeks, we've had the teenagers in the support groups ask us if they could stay for another 6 weeks because of the difference that it provides for them in their lives. So I guess it is really an example of the fact that we've expanded our services to encompass these young children and their families as they grow so that they can be healthy adults in our community and can appreciate a good life because of us being able to have the room to provide the extra services that are really important for them to move forward. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you. For everybody who just entered the room, we are in the middle of a hearing. If you intend to stay in the room, we do need you to sign in at the podium. Is there any further public comment? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elida Murray, the Executive Director of the Adams County Children's Advocacy Center and the hopeful Executive Director of the Future Brighter Tomorrow Center. So I thought, I've got our board members here doing a wonderful job of explaining what the value is long-term to the community, but I thought it would be helpful in the here and now to give you a sense of the numbers that we are talking about in terms of what's happening within our Adams County community. So in 2025, the Adams County Children's Advocacy Center received referrals for 538 referrals across Adams County. We served at our little one child at a time center at 450 West Middle Street 244 children accompanied by their family members, meaning their non-offending caregivers and their siblings or other family members. So think about in the scope of a year, one at a time, 244 children walk through our doors. And what an amazing difference it would make to be able to provide an additional level of support for however many of those other remaining of the 538 kids who we weren't able to serve. To put a number on it in terms of Gettysburg and the Gettysburg area, the areas that is served by Gettysburg Area School District, 24% of our kids come from Gettysburg Area School District residences. So in terms of what the borough and the kind of surrounding areas, that's 24% of the service continuum here in Adams County, to put a reference on that. So yes, the decision, if you were to make the decision, and I hope you do, to approve this resolution, it's not just a today decision, but it's a forever decision for kids in Adams County. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any further public comment? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn to our next special meeting. Business meeting for the Borough Council for the Borough of Gettysburg for Monday, February 2nd, 2026 at 6:50 p.m., though we are commencing at 6:44 p.m. All right. So we only have one matter of business before us here, and that is a potential resolution to support this application for grant funding. Mr. Whitmore, could you please give us the pertinent facts?
This is a complement to the prior FY 2025 CDBG project. It's basically they've been able to attain a certain level of funding through the guaranteed funds associated with being a state entitlement community. This will allow them to then stretch the dollars to the $1.2 million as presented earlier at the public hearing. Specific project details and such, I would recommend asking the applicant specific questions.
Okay. So a little background for our council members. Last year, we did vote to allocate our CDBG funds for the year to this project. I'm going to sort of loosely paraphrase the story, but essentially what we are providing them is seed money to begin their actual fundraising campaign. They needed to establish that they had the support and the financial support of the municipality to open up this other funding stream for them. So if we were to adopt this resolution this evening, what we would be doing is continuing to help them find the funding they need. I don't believe we're actually voting to contribute any additional funds ourselves at this point. Is that correct? All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Lawson? Okay. Would anybody care to make the motion?
I will.
Matt, do we have to do, it says public comment before.
Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. Is there any public comment before we do that? I'm so sorry. Thank you. Okay. Would anybody care to make that resolution?
Sure. I'm going to read from the board. A motion to adopt resolution number 012626, authorizing the submission of an application to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development by the Borough of Gettysburg for grant funding through the Competitive Community Development Block Grant, CDBG-C program, to support the Adams County Children's Advocacy Center Brighter Tomorrows Center renovation project at 224 Baltimore Street within the Borough of Gettysburg. Charles R. Gable, MPA, Borough Manager, and Sarah L. Stahl, Borough Secretary, are hereby authorized to sign, attest, execute, and deliver any necessary application forms and documents required for the submission of the CDBG-C grant program application.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Is there any additional public comment on this matter? All right, thank you all. We are adjourned. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this workshop for the Borough of Gettysburg Borough Council for February 2nd, 2026. We do have a very full room tonight, so I'd just like to remind everybody, please make sure you've signed in at the door, particularly if you intend to speak this evening. And what a lovely moment this would be for everybody to silence their phones. Okay. A couple announcements. An executive session was conducted by the Borough Council of the Borough of Gettysburg immediately following the adjournment of its monthly general business meeting held on January 12, 2026, consistent with Section 708A1 and Section 708A5 of the Sunshine Act. An executive session of the Borough Council will be conducted immediately following the adjournment of this evening's monthly work session meeting, consistent with Section 708A1 and Section 708A5 of the Sunshine Act for the following purposes. 1, to provide updated information and to discuss matters involving the employment or appointment of current or prospective borough employees, and 2, to review and discuss matters of borough business which, if conducted in public, could lead to the disclosure of information or confidentiality protected by law. We do not have any special presentations this evening, so we'll move directly into our first public comment section of the evening. This section is reserved for items appearing on tonight's agenda. We ask that you use the podium, speak directly into the microphone. Please state your name and your address of residence, and please limit yourself to 5 minutes. If you do approach the 5-minute mark, I will ask you to conclude your thoughts, as it seems there might be multiple people who would like to speak this evening. Is there any public comment?
Since everyone's storming, I'll go first.
Thank you.
My name is Miranda Weiser. My home address is 30 Musket Drive, Gettysburg. My work address is 140 Baltimore Street, where I am the executive director of the Adams County Library System. First, I want to recognize and thank the many library supporters that are in the audience this evening. So thank you for coming out and supporting us. Community members I'm speaking to number 3 under new business, PB 222-4, the expansion of the historic district. Community members with close connection to HARB have approached us at the library to tell us that this is a move to control the library's future development plans on the south side of the seminary campus, and in doing so, perhaps usurp the Borough Council's authority. While I don't want to speculate to the validity of these rumors or why anyone would want to injure the economic liberty of an institution dedicated to the public good, the functional outcome of this expansion will be exactly what the rumors assert. This change will make future development for the library system and any other property owner in the area significantly more challenging and expensive. The properties and landmarks of genuine historic significance within this area are already preserved through the Seminary Ridge Historic Preservation Foundation and viewshed protections from the National Park Service. Those structures in the area that merit historic Civil War era oversight currently fall within the existing HARB responsibilities. Expanding the district further would therefore create overlapping layers of regulation without providing meaningful additional preservation benefits. Instead, such an expansion would have negative consequences. It will significantly restrict development, rehabilitation, and adaptive reuse, particularly for buildings constructed in the 1960s and 1970s that do not possess the same historic character or significance of other protected buildings. These structures require flexibility for modernization in order to remain functional, economically viable, and align with the contemporary building standards of today. Imposing historic regulations on these later era buildings will discourage investment, slow redevelopment, and hinder the area's ability to evolve responsibly. Preservation and progress are not mutually exclusive, and the current framework existing already strikes a reasonable balance between protecting truly historic assets while allowing appropriate growth elsewhere. For these reasons, I urge the Council to deny the proposed expansion exploration and to maintain the existing historic district boundaries. Doing so will preserve our community's heritage without unnecessarily constraining development, modernization, or economic vitality. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment.
Good evening. My name is Judy Morley. My home address is 1210 White Church Road, Gettysburg. My work address is 61 Seminary Ridge, Gettysburg. I am the president of the Seminary Ridge Historic Preservation Foundation. I am also the author of several books and articles on historic preservation policy, and it is what I got my doctoral dissertation, what I did my doctoral dissertation on. My books are still required reading in city planning curricula throughout the United States. I don't say that to brag. I say that to say that I stand before you today as someone who understands the balance between historic preservation and development. And there must always, for a community to stay vital, there must always be a balance between historic preservation and development. When you lose that balance, you get Disneyland or you get Colonial Williamsburg. And we are a community where people live and work as well as come to visit. So the Seminary Ridge area already has multiple layers of protection, as Miranda referenced. Not only are we the Seminary Ridge Historic Preservation Foundation, but our Civil War era buildings are part of the HARB ordinance. So Schmucker Hall, Schmucker House, and Krauth House are already protected by HARB. We have National Park Service viewshed requirements. We have an American Battlefield Trust easement on our property, and of course the constrictions of any zoning within the borough of Gettysburg. And so that property is already well protected. I believe that if the expansion of the historic district goes through, that it will tip the balance from a healthy balance between preservation and community development to one that is overly bureaucratically weighted toward preservation when not really necessary. So I too urge that the Borough Council do not consider the expansion of the historic district into Seminary Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment.
My name is Janelle Wertzberger. My home address is 359 East Lincoln Avenue in Gettysburg. My work address is 300 North Washington Street. I'm speaking this evening against HARB's recommendation to create a new Seminary Ridge Historic District. Imposing new, quote-unquote, guiding principles, as HARB claims, is just not necessary at this gateway. More importantly, new restrictions are likely to negatively impact the construction of the new Gettysburg Public Library in that area of town. The benefits of having a purpose-built, modern library available to our citizens far outweigh the architectural value of dormitories built in the mid-20th century, which are riddled with environmental problems that will be very expensive to remediate. Furthermore, the seminary has expressed no interest in remediating them as their institution undergoes changes in student population after the merger. HARB's recommendation is simply unnecessary at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment. When we have these pauses, don't be shy. If we can line folks up, that's not a problem. So,
Good evening. My name is Don Maritz. I live on 61 East Broadway in Gettysburg. I've lived in the borough for more than 30 years and in the county for more than 50 years. I'm a library member. I've been a library member for most of that time and a board member for more than 10 years. All the other branches of the library system have dedicated buildings, I believe, except for New Oxford, but that includes Biglerville and East Berlin. Gettysburg does not. When I first came here, the library was in this building, the old prison. It's been beautifully repurposed, but and then the library moved to the post office, which is also not a library building. So after many years of thought and discussion about what the library should do, whether it should stay where it is or move, the decision has been to move to the area by the seminary, which I believe the library has purchased. I don't know the financial, what the outcome would be if this were prevented, because I think if the historic district were expanded as proposed, it would prevent the construction of the new library. I strongly oppose that, and it makes no sense. It would result in a tremendous financial and social cost to the community. The library is one of the most important institutions in this community. It serves, the central library in Gettysburg serves not only the borough, but I believe Strabane and Cumberland townships, which do not have their own library. So more than 75,000 people walk into the library every year. And as you know, parking is a huge problem. The new library would alleviate that problem. Please don't prevent the move of the library to the proposed location. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Don. Public comment. Please don't be shy.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Brandon Stone. I live at 358 Park Street, and I'm the chairman of HARB. Thank you. I just wanted to briefly note that at our December meeting, the Historic Architectural Review Board voted unanimously to recommend the creation of the Seminary Ridge Historic District. This proposal includes the Lutheran Seminary and the surrounding properties along 116 and West Confederate Avenue, which together form one of the borough's primary historic entry corridors. This recommendation follows the same rationale used by this council in 1999 when the historic district was extended to protect the key gateways into the borough. The Seminary Ridge represents the last remaining unprotected entry of that kind. Tonight, no action is required. The intent was simply to make the council and the public aware that the recommendation is complete and available should we wish to continue it as this year's priorities for council, including the upcoming Chapter 11 ordinance updates and recommendations to update the design guides. Together, working with the public, we can identify this as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public comment.
Good evening. My name is Angela Soma. I live at 44 Winding Drive in Gettysburg. And I am speaking in opposition to the expansion of the historic district. As has mentioned, the important historic buildings in that area are already preserved. And as also has been mentioned, the library is a critical institution to this area and to this town, but it is in woeful need of modernization. And they do need a new building. As was mentioned, parking is really terrible at the library. And I think it's important that there not be more impediments put into place to creating a more modern, bigger library that can serve the community better. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment.
Good evening to you all. My name is Teresa Smallwood. I am the Dean and Vice President for Academic Affairs at United Lutheran Seminary. I had absolutely no intention of speaking tonight, but once I heard the gentleman say there was no need to take action, it just warmed my heart. I live in Craft House. I've been there for almost 5 years. There is no more preserved institution than what lies on Seminary Ridge. And my concern is, as a resident and someone who lives there, I want to see this library come about because it is the young people, it is the folk who come to our institution who will benefit the most. More particularly, we need to be concerned about the intergenerational interests we have in developing our young people to grow up and appreciate reading again. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Rob Williams. I'm an employee of Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. I'm located at 61 Seminary Ridge in Gettysburg. I'm also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Adams County Library System. I would just like to mention and remind that after a survey from the Adams County Historical Society, they did note that the location of the proposed location of the new library is of no historical significance. So there is no reason for the Historical Society to believe that that library should not be built there. And to my knowledge, the library project does currently enjoy the full support of the Historical Society. I would also like to note, to my knowledge, none of the organizations in question, whether it's the seminary, the library, or our museum, were approached by any members of HARB for our consideration on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more public comment? Last chance? All right, we'll move on. Thank you. It is correct. We will not be taking any action tonight. One of the legislative priorities that the council has set for this year is to take a deep dive on potentially repealing and replacing the HARB ordinance with something a little bit more contemporary and easy to navigate. Every time we change an ordinance, there is a significant cost to the borough. So it is unlikely that we would consider making a change to an ordinance that we are about to scrap. So if that's the way council decides to go with it. So while the discussion will be had by council at some point this year, we're not going to be acting on this anytime soon. In fact, tonight's meeting is a workshop where we simply discuss ideas. We will not be taking any votes this evening. I'd like to hand this over now to Mr. Whitmore, who will make his presentation on the HARB issues before us.
So good evening. We do have materials that were provided electronically. Overall, the policy briefing summary provides the gist. There's two separate themes that have been, I guess, running with this that aren't necessarily related. A, the need to update Chapter 11 historic districts, the actual ordinance text, and the associated Gettysburg Design Guide, which was last published in 1997. We've reached a point where these documents are becoming obsolete. In particular, as the solicitor, Mr. Eastman, has indicated, there were issues with the previous draft of the ordinance. There have been modifications made by council to that document, but there are still some issues associated with the design guide. Generally, an update of this magnitude would involve services of a professional associated with an architectural firm that has experience in documenting historic properties. In particular, we want to make sure that the design guide that we're establishing for the borough is something that's not only defensible for the borough, but is also in keeping with Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office guidelines and the Department of Interior guidelines as they relate to historic properties. Overall, there's that aspect, and then the second aspect being the expansion of the district. At this time, that's not something that staff is encouraging. The district itself is used as a kind of form-based code to a certain extent, which were from the zoning perspective of it, that may be better handled with the subdivision and land development ordinance for some aspects as it relates to physical block development, the rhythm and scale of how buildings are arranged. Not necessarily for the historic district, but it could be something identified and reviewed. Overall, though, what staff is really concerned with is more about the design guide and ordinance itself. So at this time, we provide you all with the information provided by HARB at their December meeting, recommending a study be produced for the expansion or creation of a new district. Overall, when we're talking about districts, it's also important to remember the entirety of the borough is in a federal historic district, as that relates to the military park. Being able to facilitate the development of buildings within the borough is something that the comp plan encourages. It's something that there's a want to be able to establish affordable housing in the borough that's also potentially constrained with expansion. So there's a lot of things to consider on that aspect. It would be something I don't think staff was prepared to do at this time, but it is something we can do, but are not recommending. A lot of words just came out of myself, a lot of rambling to a certain extent, but overall, what we were proposing is a process whereby over a period of about the end of this year, we'd probably be able to have the ordinance updated relatively quickly and on a pathway for the design guide, engaging with HARB in this process, and then allowing for public comment during those meetings. Overall, this shouldn't be a very taxing process, but like I said, if it becomes necessary to engage a professional architect in their services, then we'll be able to evaluate any potential grant funding through SHPO. So.
All right. Questions for Mr. Whitmore? All right. So we had previously been counseled by our solicitor that perhaps we can look to some sort of model ordinance, something that is derived directly from the empowering state legislation. Our ordinance goes back about 60 years-ish and has had multiple revisions and iterations that sometimes conflict, which is causing issues. So we think there's probably a path for a much simpler approach to this. So that is something Mr. Whitmore, I believe, will be digging into with the solicitor in the coming months. In the interim, I would ask that members continue to familiarize yourselves with documentation as it's provided to you. It would be beneficial that we all understand the full history of HARB within the borough. Any questions for Mr. Whitmore? Anything else from you?
That's all on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Claybaugh. Oh, man, he's going to the podium. I think he was good.
So I'm going to talk to you about street work, and before I get started, I'm guessing that majority of the people in this room are not here to listen to me talk about street work. So I won't be offended at all if you get up in the middle of my presentation.
Whoa.
No, I love street work, and I hope you do too, but I won't be upset.
Okay, stand up.
I didn't want this to be this awkward where somebody gets up.
You need streets to get to the library.
Yeah, you do need streets to get to the library and to all of our historic districts. The main reason for my presentation today is because on your agenda next week, I'm going to be asking for an authorization to advertise the 2026 street work. So I wanted to go over a little bit what the scope of that project, talk to you about a few changes I'd like to make to the scope from what was in your 2026 budget, and kind of go over the schedule of the project for you. So just kind of tee you up for the decision that you need to make next week. So first, we're talking about the budget. What you had in your budget is this number right here, the $363,000, and that incorporated two different things. It was $284,000 worth of street preservation, base repair, those kind of things, and also the $79,000 for the Steinway crosswalks. Two different budget items in your budget, but we put them all together and we bid them all together. Now, here's the complicated part: is that we actually bid the crosswalks with the base repairs that go with the street because it's like type of work for contractors, separate from the preservation. The preservation that we propose is this: there's crack sealing, and then we put down a high performance chip seal, which is a glorified chip seal with high performance chips that lock together a little bit better. They don't whip off so much. They're used in downtown settings and not like state roads out in farmland. And then we cover those high performance chips with this fog seal. And that's really the secret behind this preservation treatment. Is this, we call it a grip tight, is the formal name. Generic name is fog seal. But we cover that with this grip tight. We've done this in a lot of streets in the past. Ridge, Howard, Washington, High. Those are a few streets that we've done, and this is kind of a tried and true practice, and we're really happy with it. So that's what we'd like to do again. There's only a certain amount of contractors that do this. There's only 3 that I know of. We had Martin that did it 5 years ago. AMS does it, Russell Standard. So we kind of bid that separately because we know what kind of contractors that come in and do the preservation. We bid that separate from all the rest of the street work. So that's kind of how this presentation is going to go. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this $120,000 line item, and then I'll talk to you about the Steinway crosswalks, and then we'll go back to the preservation. Now, the streets that are in this $120,000 line item and the streets that are in the preservation are the exact same streets. So before we put the preservation down, we first fix all the potholes, all of the base repairs, and then we come through and make the whole thing black. So again, what you have budgeted is $363,000. If you add up all of these numbers, you get to $348,000. So we're a little bit under the budget, and one of the questions I'm going to have for you at the end of this is whether you want me to bid it this way, or do you want me to add one of the streets that I cut from this to be able to get below the budget, and that's Constitution. And I'll get to that later in the conversation. Okay, so here's the streets. This top list of streets here is in your 2026 budget. The bottom list of streets is what I'd like to change it to. This top list, first let me go back and say that this list of streets is something that Robbie and I developed over 5 years ago. When we developed the capital improvement plan, our SIP, 5 years ago, that's where a large amount of these streets came from. And we just basically cut and pasted that into your 2026 budget. A lot of things have changed since 5 years ago. There's utility work, Columbia Gas does some stuff. We do some curb ramps. So there's some reasons why we wanted to change a couple of things. Plus, some of those streets have degraded to a point where it just doesn't make sense to do them with a preservation anymore. And then there was one locus here that we're adding. So the things that are in red are the streets that I'd like to cut from the list. The things that are in green are the street that I would like to add to the list. So 4th Street, the reason I want to cut that from the list is because it's an $83,000 line item just for the base repair, and then the preservation is another $17,000. It's close to $100,000 to preserve that street. For $100,000, you could basically mill and overlay that street, brand new hot mix asphalt, not a preservation treatment. And the reason why it's so expensive is because the base has, in the past 5 years, failed to a point where it's about 50% of it that needs to be replaced. There's some details over here that just show you the different methods of base repair that we do. We basically mill out the bad areas, those potholes, and replace them with hot mix asphalt before we make the whole thing black. Whenever you get to close to 50% of the street, it doesn't make sense financially to do that anymore. Then it's better just to bring in a big milling machine and just do the entire street. So I'd like to cut that one for that reason. And by the way, the cost estimate that I gave you on the previous slide already excluded these red line items. Constitution, I'm going to come back to that one. We cut that one out of there to get below the budget, but I'm not so sure that I want to remove that one. I might want to stick back in, but I'll talk to you about the budget for that one later. And then the last one is Queen Street. And the reason why we want to cut that one is because Columbia Gas has come to us and they want to do a significant amount of work in Colt Park. And they're going to be chopping up that street. So it doesn't make sense for us to put any money into it now. And then lastly, down here is Locust Avenue. So this is the street that right at the bottom of Hillcrest. Everybody knows where Hillcrest is, and Locust. Locust comes right off of Baltimore Street and intersects at the bottom of the hill at Hillcrest. Whenever we did the preservation on Hillcrest 5 years ago, we included Locust. I'm not sure why it wasn't included in the list this time, but it makes sense for those two to stay together. And it's not extreme, a lot of money to do that one, only $5,000 to add that one. So those are the changes I would like to make in the scope. Whenever we do preservation, there is a couple of things that we keep in mind too. We don't necessarily have to do curb ramps with preservations. That is not a federal requirement, but there are some places where it makes sense. In that list was Washington Street and Stratton Street. So this is the intersection, this is Stratton here, and this is Washington Street here. And if you ever come to this intersection, this inlet right here is real low. This curb ramp sits full of water. There's a puddle of water right here at this intersection, and then just down from this intersection is this curb ramp, and this one sits full of water. We didn't have a whole lot of control whenever this project, when it came in. This is a Columbia Gas related project. If you ever go down West Middle Street, the south side of the sidewalks are brand new. The north side aren't, and that's because Columbia Gas came in and put a brand new gas line down the south side. So we got a free gift. We got brand new sidewalks from Columbia Gas down that side, but we didn't have a whole lot of control over these. And this is a typical thing. Whenever the curb ramps, they have to come in flush. The new law says that they have to be flush. You're not allowed to have them raised at all. So it's a common thing where they get them in too low and then they sit full of water. We would like to make those adjustments. Anytime you do a preservation and you're making a street good again, drainage is a very important thing. In my paving courses in college, actually, the first three lessons that my professor gave us was drainage. Always fix the drainage first, and then you fix the rest of the street. So these things are related to drainage. So we would like to do those couple of things. Get this just the dome area of those curb ramps, just the dome area of this, and this inlet changed a little bit. I think there's a couple more. So this is Stratton Street here as well. The water comes down the street here and it misses it. It's like raised up right here a little bit too high. And then that's one of my pet peeves is whenever we spend all this money to put these inlets in and the water doesn't even get in the inlets, just goes right around. And then that intersection sits full of water and it gets icy. It's not a major issue, but while we're doing this, now's the time to fix it. The solution to this is really easy. Just mill the pavement down a little bit on the side before we put the preservation down. And this is also a middle street. If you go down West Middle Street, you might have hit this with your tires. I know Robbie hits it often with his snow plows. It's only 5 years old and it's already showing signs of distress from the snow plow hitting it. So before we do Middle Street, we'd like to just lower that inlet a couple of inches. Now, like I said, it goes with all of the street work, the mill and fill areas, is these crosswalks. And just so council, just as a refresher to the council that was here last year and an update to the new council members, we did bid this project last year. We bid the replacement of the two crosswalks. It's this one here in front of, this is the Dobbin House. Dobbin House is sitting this side. So this is the crosswalk in the Dobbin House, and this is the one right in front of Tommy's Pizza. So those are the two crosswalks I'm going to talk about. We bid them last year. We only got one bidder, and our bids were really high. We kind of bid it late in the season. I'm thinking that's why we got high prices, but for whatever reason, it didn't fit our budget. So we excluded that from the work we did. It was actually 2 years. It wasn't last year. It was 2 years ago. We excluded that from the work, and now we're back around a new cycle of street work, and we'd like to add it back in. We still have a highway occupancy permit from the state. We've been extending our permit. We are extended through this year, so as long as we do the work this year, we're still within that same permit. But we would like to go ahead and try to replace these two. One of the issues with this crosswalk is there used to be these in-road lights that flashed. Whenever you pushed a button, there was in-road lights that flashed, but they were problematic. Every time snowplow hit them, they would knock the lights out, and they were very expensive to replace. So those have been removed, and whenever they got removed, they weren't done great, and now the whole thing's starting to fail. So we would like to replace that crosswalk. And then the other one is this one, and pretty obvious distress here in the street on that western lane mostly that needs to be cut out. So the base repair is this line right here. So we'd cut out all of that bad area before we do the crosswalk. Whenever we did those crosswalks, they were done with an imprint material. Now we would like to use a material that's called Street Print XD. The Tawnytown Road, which is this intersection way up here, And then also the other Steinway leg has a street print XD. It looks very similar to this one, but they're holding up way better. It's just a better procedure in my opinion. So that's how we intend to do these. So that's the same thing that we bid 2 years ago. It's exactly the same thing now, exact same price. That's not changing in your budget at all. I'm just letting you know that that's included in here. The only other thing I wanted to say about that is that's what's driving the schedule here. We would like to, and the reason why I'm coming to so soon in the season to get this out in the street is because we hoping to get this thing bid sooner to get better bid results and to beat a lot of the 250th anniversary events that are happening this summer. So we're hoping if you authorize me to advertise this next week, I'll have bids ready for you to consider at your March meeting, and then hopefully go to construction as soon as April, maybe May at the latest, and beat a lot of the 250th anniversary things. So back to the list of streets. This is exactly the same street list that I showed you earlier. Now we're just talking about the preservation. That's the crack sealing, this chip seal, this high performance chip seal, and the grip tight fog seal. This is a map just showing you the streets that we were talking about before. I was showing you that we wanted to eliminate, this is Queen Street that we wanted to eliminate. I want to talk to you a little bit more about Constitution. As you can see, Constitution is a pretty long street. So keep that in mind as we get to the next slide. And then 4th Street right here, I'd like to eliminate that one. And then, like I said earlier, Locust, this is next to Hillcrest. But that's just to show you on a map of all the streets that we're going to be working on. Okay, so this is a very similar slide to the first slide. It's exactly what you have in your budget. It's $263,000. I showed you all of the streets that I'd like to do is $348,000. So we got a little bit of a balance, $14,000. So you kind of have three options here. It's either say, yes, Chad, I'd like you to go ahead and advertise it, excluding Constitution. We'll keep the $14,000 in our budget for something else. If you have a lot of other expenses that you're getting hit with, maybe you tell me that that's what you wanted me to do. You might tell me, no, Chad, I want you to add Constitution, and we're going to bite the bullet and we're going to increase the budget to pay for that as well. Or you might say, well, we're not sure yet. Can we bid it as an alternate? And that's also an option. We can bid a Constitution as an alternate. I would say only that it'll add a little bit of effort from my end to bid it as an alternate, but not a lot of money. We're talking about maybe $500 to $1,000. If you absolutely are sure that you're not going to want to do it, just tell me, don't do that. We'll save the $500. If you want me to bid it as an alternate, it takes a little bit of time to bid it as an alternate, but it's not a huge lift. So you might tell me that just let's go ahead and bid it as an alternate for now, and then we'll decide if we want to do that once we get bid results. Again, all of these estimates I'm providing you are engineer's best guess, right? Once we get the bids in from the contractor, you'll have another opportunity to decide on exactly what streets you want to do. So Constitution, again, it's a pretty expensive street, right? So it's a long street. There's $9,000 worth of base repairs. The preservation's $38,000 for a total of $47,000. So if you wanted to add the $47,000 to the project, obviously the $14,000 balance isn't going to cover the full $47,000. So that is it for the street preservation work, unless you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions?
Was this under what liquid fuels that we budgeted this?
I think the street preservation work was liquid fuels, but not the Steinway crosswalks.
Okay. I guess just could you speak a little bit about like, you know, your pick, like why these streets, or why like this one just gets improvement while this one gets repaired? Is it just because of the conditions, or like do you have a criteria you go by for that?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the things whenever we do street maintenance plans is we like to keep the good streets good. That's kind of the slang for it. If there's a street that's within 7 to 10 years old, before it starts to degrade to a point where you need to do a full base repair, you try to do a preservation treatment. These preservations only cost about $5 a square yard. If you have to do a full replacement, it's $50 a square yard. So it's 10 times more expensive to replace a street than to preserve a street. And you can preserve a street over and over and over. Every 10 years, you can preserve it again. And you could extend the life of a street by 100 years if you kept doing it every 10 years versus having to wait till it fails. Once it gets to a point where it's showing failure, like I was talking about with 4th Street, that one's to the point where a preservation isn't going to help it anymore. The preservation, there's all kinds of things that degrade pavement, and a preservation keeps the pavement from degrading, but it doesn't fix the base below it. It's just a Band-Aid on the top, essentially. So everything that we're doing in this preservation plan is just that, a preservation. None of this work is full replacement. Any street that gets to the point where it's getting to be a full replacement, we remove those. So the base repair areas that I'm showing are small areas. They're just pothole areas, 5 by 5, 10 by 20, those kind of things. Maybe just a straight line mill right down the middle if there was a crack down the middle, or those kind of things. It's not full milling the street out and completely rebuilding it, because again, that would be $50 a square yard. And if any municipality that's only redoing the oldest streets and taking care and putting all of their money into the oldest streets is usually falling behind, because it's just dumping money into those old streets. It's always better to keep those good streets good while you can. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. For that 14 grand, is there already a contingency line item built into that initial budget for that?
Yeah. So like I said, there is some these are engineers' estimates. And we do have a little bit of contingency. I'm going to say about 5%. We don't really know until we get our bids back. Even once we get our bids back, I usually say that you should have a little bit of contingency in your budget, because as we were doing these base repairs, we try to estimate them. As we had our inspectors go out and look at all the streets and get an estimate of how, like, the percentage of base repairs that we'd have to do on the street before we do the preservation. Once before we actually go to construction, we're going to go out there with our inspectors again. We'll actually paint out squares on the pavement on the areas that he has to actually replace, and then we'll pay him for exactly what he did. So that whole process, it ebb and flows a little bit. So there is a little bit, there's probably about a 5% contingency, I would have to say, in some of the quantities that we gave you. But I hate to give that away too early in the process, because if we get really bad bid results, it might be a year where there's only 3 of these contractors that do this, and they might all just happen to have filled their schedule and they don't really need any more work, and all of a sudden we get really high bid results. Now, one thing that is good news so far is that fuel prices have been pretty steady to low, and pavement preservation is highly dependent on fuel prices or oil prices.
And then I saw there's like that little line where it says like March 30th, contract 1 through May 29th, and contract 2, April through May. Would you try to have, like, say for the Steinway project where it's high volume, would you try to have that in the earlier of that schedule?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yep, we would like to try to get to that one as soon as possible. Now, you can't start any work on state roads before April 1st, so that's part of what drives that schedule. But as close to April 1st as possible, we would like to get Steinway done. The rest of the streets are not going to have as big of an impact on tourist traffic.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just have a quick question. It's sort of about the contingency built in, and that was already answered, but suppose that there's close to $14,000 left when you're getting sort of nearing the end of the project. Would you be able to consider or reconsider some of the curb ramps that we sort of set aside? Or could you not mix apples and oranges and use money from this budget to take care of some of the curbs that we aren't using the CBD?
Yeah, I understand the question. I think the answer is that it would be difficult.
Gotcha.
I don't think the answer is no.
Yeah.
I think you could, but there are, I think like you said, it's a bit apples and oranges, or apples and
with what you budgeted
and
which line
vegetable,
item.
yeah. So it would be something. it would be a little bit difficult to add it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any thoughts about? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I might have missed you talking about what would be the benefit of adding Constitution? Did you originally take that out and then you brought it back in, but you're hypothetically seeing it going to be over budget by about $50,000? What would be the benefit of then doing it this year? And going over budget to do it is.
Good question, and I don't think you missed it, and so maybe I'll try to explain a little bit better. So, Constitution is one of, like, just like I was explaining to Mr. Bales, if you can keep your good streets good, that's really important. Constitution is one of those streets where you can still keep it good. If you would get a treatment on it soon, it hasn't shown a lot of base failure. It's got a decent cross section. It's not rutting. It's not blanketing. It's not getting polished. Bleeding out. It's all of the things that we look for in pavement failure. So it has the characteristics of a street that could use a preservation to preserve it. And if you would not preserve it now, it's a pretty long street that's going to cost a lot of money later down the road. 10 times as much later down the road.
Just to interrupt real quick,
sure.
Since as the bids exist now, we're looking at a $14,000 surplus on the budget line item. So if we add in the $47,000 item, then we're looking at a $33,000 overage.
Yeah, and that's exactly. Thank you, Matt. That's exactly why I was looking for what street could I cut and get it back within the budget, and that was the only really big one. All the rest of them are $5,000 or $10,000 line items, and they weren't getting me below your budget. That was the one that I had to chop to get below your budget and get that $14,000 balance.
But you're saying we'll get the cost savings over time.
Oh, absolutely.
By biting a bullet now and saving money in the future.
And in the perfect world, if I could give you, and of course my engineering judgment has to include your budget. It has to. I got to be a steward of your finances. But I would say it's a good use of your money to preserve Constitution now. So in a perfect world, if you could do that too, that would be a good idea.
And so, Charles, would we fund the overage through liquid fuels? And do we have? I think we have a pretty substantial liquid fuels
couple options.
Balance there, don't we?
Yeah, we could do it through liquid fuels. We could do it through capital projects, or just absorb it into the general fund as well.
We have a pretty significant liquid fuels balance, right?
Over 900.
Yeah. So. $33,000 out of a $900,000 fund to preserve a road that's going to cost us 10 times more if it fails in 10 years. I mean, what do you guys want to do with that?
I have maybe a silly question. Is it possible to split up the improvements and the preservation, or does that all have to be done at the same time?
Yeah, they kind of go together.
Okay.
Yeah, because the preservation itself, that grip tight fog seal and that chip seal doesn't fix any of the base failure.
Okay.
And those base failures are kind of underneath. We cut those areas out, fix them first, and then we cover the whole street black. So they kind of go together.
My other question is, if you were to do Constitution Avenue, would that be done over the summer?
All of these things would be done over the summer, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
with the exception of Steinway.
Except for Steinway. Steinway would be as soon as possible.
Right.
April 1st at the soonest.
Right.
All of the rest of the things, so because there's two different contracts that we deal with, the first contractor, if he comes in to do Steinway in the end of April, that same contractor might go through and do all of the base repairs and get that done in April or May. And then contract 2 with the street preservation, that contractor might not come in until August or September. They don't like to do those preservations into October, but those could be as late as September.
Right. Yeah, I guess with Constitution, I was just... I walk on Constitution every single day. That's super busy for the college. So just thinking we could do it when the college is out of session.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is something that we work closely with Jim Biesecker on any street work we do, and make sure that we're coordinating with his events and try to avoid when freshmen are moving back in and those kind of things. So yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Great, thank you.
I think that $14,000 might not actually be there when we get quotes back. We might be well over that. We might have to pull into the budget just to get that done. So I think it would be a good idea to bid that as a a la carte, so to speak, like you mentioned. So go with your recommendations and see where that comes back, and have an extra bid for Constitution. And if it falls within, if the numbers work, then I think that would be good. I agree with you. We want to avoid pushing the bill down the road, but when these bids come back, that 14,000 might not be there. We'll see.
Accurate. Yep.
Yeah. Do we do these street improvements, street preservation every year?
No, we do them in this last SIP, which was it 5 or 6 years ago that we wrote that, Charles? 5 years ago. We've had two street preservation contracts in that 5 years. So we usually have every other year we'll do a street preservation contract, 3 years at the most. We like to do a preservation contract. And then the off years we'll do some complete street repavement. So next year we already have a couple of streets that we're going to be completely rebuilding. That's going to be East Lincoln streets associated with a stormwater project, East Railroad Street. We're going to be completely rebuilding. So there's some full rebuild projects that are different than these preservations. And that's not an exact science that we said two times within 5 years. That's a roundabout what we like to try to do.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I kind of like Mr. Mooney's approach there of breaking out the bids as the add-on there. I think that might be the way to go. Anybody else?
I agree with that.
All right, cool.
So I'll move forward with bidding Constitution as an alternate.
Great, perfect. Now, I think you're also going to talk to us about the Charters of Freedom
Correct.
Plaza.
Yeah, and I can be pretty quick with this one. And for the council members that aren't aware of this, through our subdivision land development process and our ordinance, we have a requirement for a developer's agreement. There's two different forms of developer's agreement. There's a small form and a large form. The large form includes a lot of financial security items for whenever there's like new streets or things be dedicated to the borough. We require that the developer post a bond to secure those things. Then there's a smaller form. In this case, we'd be using this smaller form of the developer's agreement. But really the reason, and this is a very much a formality. The Planning Commission has approval authority in Gettysburg for subdivisions, land developments. And they would approve in this case, a subdivision, and then the developer's agreement would come to you guys. I wouldn't usually have this presentation to you like this. It would just come to you and say, hey, look, they approved the subdivision. Now we need the developer's agreement to be approved by you guys. Only you guys can approve agreements. The Planning Commission can't do that. So that still have to come to you guys. Just like an operation and maintenance stormwater management agreement. Those would also come to you guys. The reason why I'm coming to you in this case is because there is a bit of a chicken and egg thing. So this is the subdivision plan, and John has a copy of the big packet of subdivision plans that are all going to go to the Planning Commission in 2 weeks from now. That's way more detailed than this one. But just to give you an idea of what's being proposed here is, so the Dobbin House is right here. The Charter of Freedom Plaza is proposed right here. Well, this house right here currently sits in that location. The HARB has approved it to be relocated to this location. Currently, there is a old block garage that sits in that location that's also been approved for demolition. This is the old red barn that sits in the back. So this house is going to get moved to this location, and then this house is going to stay. And it's going to get turned just slightly so that it kind of marries up with Washington Street, but it also faces the Charters. That's the best way it could fit in there. As you can see by its configuration, there's a lot line that exists currently down the middle. This new building will sit right on top of that lot line. So you can't really build or move that house until that lot line's fixed. But you also can't create this line until this process is done, because now you'd create a garage on the back of that lot, and that's it's not able to be a primary use, a garage by itself. So there's this chicken and egg dilemma on how to get past this. And after meeting with John and talking about the best way to approach this, we said, well, we got to do this developer's agreement anyways. Why don't we just say in there that the borough will allow this development to move forward, and Jackie White, the project owner here, will agree to finalize the subdivision process. So she will eliminate essentially this line. She won't let that line there. She's got to sell that property to herself, essentially for $1 or whatever, so that line is eliminated, right? So that's how this is going to have to happen. It would be so in today's world, it's actually kind of really cool that you can move a house, but as you can imagine, you wouldn't be able to just hover that house in air while you're going through this month or two process of the subdivision. So rather than hovering a house in the air while you're going through all this stuff, you would do a developer's agreement that would say that both parties agree, that borough would agree to approve the process of moving the house. Ms. White would approve or agree to finalizing the subdivision process, and that would allow her to go ahead and proceed with the project. So that is essentially why this developer's going to come, this development agreement is going to be on your agenda prior to the subdivision being approved by the planning commission. That's why there's this chicken and egg thing. Although they go together. Does that make sense? Clear as mud.
No.
I apologize if I confused you, because sometimes I confuse myself with this.
All right. Any questions about that? All right. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Cats.
Good evening. I was told to keep this very quick, and I think we can. Overall, we've received some concern from our spay-neuter partners, Forever Love Rescue, regarding enforcement of our current cat regulations as they appear in Chapter 2, Animals. In particular, the owner of a cat is defined as someone that feeds a cat. That presents a problem as individuals who engage with the services of Forever Love Rescue are bringing them stray animals to be spayed or neutered, which research indicates does decrease the population of feral cat colonies. So it's a positive. By ending that program, that would be a net negative for the borough. We'd have increased feral cat populations. Staff has proposed that either the borough, just directly update the ordinance with basic language that we provided, whereby instead of saying any person owning, keeping, feeding, harboring, or having custody of a cat, any person who allows a cat to reside or remain about his or her premises shall be considered a cat owner. Getting rid of most of that language to just have it state any person owning, keeping, providing permanent shelter and habitat, harboring, or having custody of a cat is a cat owner. That should alleviate the initial concerns, but additionally, if it's council's wish, it would be probably beneficial to actually have a meeting with Forever Love Rescue, Inc. to discuss their concerns and formulate a more proactive ordinance to facilitate their efforts and efforts to control feral cats. So that's what we have from staff.
Okay. Any thoughts on that?
I do, but I'm laughing about it only because it's, I never knew it was in there, and I just think about all the good deeds that people do and feeding cats and just making sure they're well kept and just out of the goodness of their heart, and I don't think they should be considered the owners of the cats. I mean,
So
kind of like old, but I'm trying to understand it.
we heard arguments to the exact opposite a few
I'm
years
sure.
ago when we started the
Yeah.
trap neuter release program. There were, I believe, 4 key areas of the borough that had large colonies. Our neighborhood has several colonies, and there are good-natured folks who will do things like put out a ton of wet cat food for these feral cats. And not only do the cats enjoy the cat food, but so do populations of skunks, so do rabbits, so all sorts of stuff. So there are multiple overlapping public health issues. Cat feces in your garden is bad for you. You shouldn't eat any plants if they've been fertilized by a cat. There's lots of reasons to control those populations. When they, at the very least, when they become overpopulated, they tend to starve. So we did partner to create the trap neuter release program. It is a minor expense. I think the first year we budgeted $2,500, and it's dropped every year since. But we're still having good success in controlling those populations. So if you are a person who is encouraging the breeding of feral cats in your neighborhood, there is a level of responsibility that you need to take on, and just having a good heart and wanting to feed them is not necessarily the end of the conversation.
I know. I wasn't making it the end of the conversation. I was just pointing out that sometimes people don't know that their good deeds are leading to other issues and complications, and totally respect what Forever Love does. They've been doing that for a long, long time. And
Yeah, and it's been a success for us.
Mm-hmm.
All right, does anybody have opposition to beginning a conversation with them to make sure that we're crafting the language in a way that's as mutually beneficial as possible? All right.
Sounds great.
So let's get going on that.
But
All right.
clarification, as a cat owner, do I have to keep feeding my cat until we decide on this, or can I stop feeding my cat?
I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. So. Mr. Gable, juror parking.
Yes, juror parking. There is a draft memorandum of understanding or agreement between the borough and the county in your packet for your review. It's just some minor tweaks from what we have existing previously for those new on council. The borough partners with the court system here in Adams County to provide for the parking of citizens called to jury duty. Whenever court is in session, those potential jurors park in the Racehorse Alley garage at designated spaces, and then a nominal fee is charged to the county for those parking privileges. So all of that is articulated in the renewal of this MOU. It's been successful from the borough's perspective. The court communicates with the folks in the parking department for when court is going to be in session. We then promptly reserve those spaces at the top of the garage. The jurors come in, do their civic duty, and leave. This happens about once a month. It's not onerous. Obviously, it's usually during the week, so it's not an issue of, taking up spaces during large events or other things happening in town. So the MOU is terminating, and so we should renew it.
All right. Any questions on that? Any opposition to continuing our longstanding practice of helping people engage in their civic duty? All right. We'll be good to go.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our new business. We don't have any current or old business, so that takes us back to our second public comment section of the evening. This section is not restricted to items appearing on tonight's agenda. We do ask that you use the podium. Please state your name and address and limit yourself to 5 minutes. Is there any public comment?
Good evening again. And thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Wilson. Thank you. I appreciate the comments offered earlier this evening. I want to clarify a key point for the record. The Historic Architectural Review Board recommendation to create a new district does not halt, nor does it prohibit the development, nor does it automatically prevent the demolition of any structure within the borough. The Historic District establishes a review process for the exterior so that decisions are made deliberately and transparently. Importantly, no application related to the library project or the seminary dormitories is before HARB. At this time, and any future proposal would be reviewed on its own merit with full opportunity for public input, deliberation of the project's public benefit. The intent of the recommendation is to ensure one of the borough's most important, significant historic gateways is thoughtfully managed over time, consistent with the approach council has already taken elsewhere. It is not intended to preclude civic investment or institutional growth. If council were to consider funding a study as part of the Chapter 11 update, that effort could align with the borough with other certain state and federal grant opportunities related to planning, preservation, and community development. Ultimately, the recommendation simply provides council with an option for future consideration. It does not impose any outcome on any specific projects. Thank you, and good evening.
Thank you, sir. I don't see any other people from the public here, so I think I can safely say we can adjourn to executive session. Thank you.